I think what it does to Charlie, regardless of whether or not we know, we get to have this sort of like imaginative conversation around like why it matters so much to him that Ellie wrote this and he memorized it and he continues to dwell in it so much. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to No Script, an unscripted conversation about theater's best scripts. I'm Jackson. I'm here with Jacob again today, and we are talking about a title, at least, that you likely know. This is the play The Whale by Samuel Hunter that we'll be talking about today, and excited for the conversation.
I really love Sam Hunter as a playwright, and he's not a playwright that we've talked about on the podcast yet. So really delighted by the opportunity to get him in there. There's a lot of plays of Sam's that we could have put in here and probably will in the coming seasons. Plays that have been premiered at Steppenwolf recently and are now off Broadway, plays that are very heavily lauded. The first Sam Hunter play I read is a play called The Harvest, which has it's a play very much about religion and about kind of the mission that is part of many religious communities, and that very features prominently in The Whale. And so it's just exciting to talk about Sam Hunter after all this time to finally have the opportunity to. If you're scratching your brain and you're like, why The Whale? Yeah, that does sound familiar. Why? It's because there was a recent movie adaptation of The Whale starring, of course, Brendan Fraser and Sadie Sink, and this was the movie that Brendan Fraser very emotionally won an Oscar for, after a whole history of Brendan Fraser as an actor that is not really my story to share, but it is the movie has gained some kind of cultural prominence because of that story, because of Brendan's role in the movie, because of the award, and that adds. It's one of those things where there's something outside of the story that is now kind of part of the story in a way. Like it's hard for me now to read The Whale, which is a very powerful play, without some of that like filtering through somehow in like a phenomenological way.
Yeah. There's such a pathos from the sort of narrative around the story of Brendan Fraser returning to acting in this particular role, and the role itself has a lot of pathos in it, and the play itself as well. So it's all very wrapped up in that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is a hard play. This is a play about people in, real hard situations. And it is also, on the flip side of that, a play that Samuel Hunter describes as like an optimistic play, a play in some ways about hope. A play about, as the protagonist says, I'm not quoting exactly, but says something to the effect of late in the play, like the inability of people to not take care of each other. Right. And that's a strange, it's a story that I think is intended to be difficult in places to experience, and that is designed to be uplifting to the human soul in another way, and only really a playwright of Samuel Hunter's sheer talent can pull off, I think, something that is trying to do both those things at once in such a technically brilliant way.
Yeah. The way that this play juxtaposes those things is the only way that it can pull off what it does. so which is a very oblique statement, and saving some of it for later on. But yeah, absolutely.
We got to get the raving about
exactly.
out early before we dive into the analysis.
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
It's powerful, man. It's powerful even to read. I have seen the clips from the movie, but I've not seen a live stage production of this show. And my feeling is that those experiences are pretty different.
Yeah.
In fact, I've read several reviews of people who both saw the stage show, typically at American Players Theater, but also, South Coast Rep did it. Many prominent theaters have done The Whale. So people who've seen a stage production, a good stage production, and the film, and they talk about the difference between those experiences. And, I'm speaking just from the imagination of those things, but even in my sense of them, it seems very different.
Yeah. For sure, for sure. Excited for the conversation today. We'll jump into it in just a moment here, but also excited as next week is our beginning of our themed month for this season. Excited to have this kind of hallmark of the season arrive, and we're going to be chatting about adaptations this themed month, which is going to be an interesting way for us to approach a conversation across 4 weeks.
This is going to be a great opportunity for us to just nerd out a little bit. Yeah. Not that the whole podcast isn't that just all we do for, like 50 minutes every week, but adaptations are like a particular artistic interest of mine. They're not really like my research interest as a theater scholar. My research is in other things, but they are like an artistic interest. Like I direct a fair number of adaptations. I write a fair number of adaptations. And so I am very interested in the way that a story transmutes across not just genres, but like whole artistic stylings. Like what a book is fundamentally very different than what a play is. Even though they're both storytelling tools, those two things are very, very different things.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And the way that it kind of moves through the different art forms is really interesting. I agree. It'll be fun to chat about, especially in our particular context, because adaptations is kind of something that Jacob and I have a very early partnership on.
Yeah. We did a lot of that work together when we were in college together. And yeah, absolutely. I think it should be a blast. If you are a patron, you've seen already the wonderful titles that we are going to be looking at. Some of them are straight up adaptations. Some of them are like loosely based on kind of adaptations. We're trying to get a little variety even inside of our themed month where we're trying to talk across scripts. So if you're a patron, you've seen those because the patrons over on our Patreon page are the folks that support the podcast financially. We love to do this podcast, fabulous part of our lives, but it just would not be possible to do without the financial support of the folks on Patreon. If that's not you yet, I just encourage you to check it out. Look over on the page, see if it's something you can make work. You know how Patreon works, I think, at this point. It's, different monthly tiers. You commit to a monthly amount to give through the platform. Our lowest tier will continue to be $1 a month. For $1 a month, $12 over the course of a calendar year, you make running this show possible. That is not an exaggeration. We could not do it without that support. If that's already you, big thank you. This show, this episode specifically, and every episode specifically, which is not what specifically means, but I'll say it anyway. They happen because of you. So huge thank you. Just a huge thanks for your support. And if that's not you yet, check us out. Patreon.com/NoScriptPodcast. That's all one word, no hyphens, no underscores. Patreon.com/NoScriptPodcast. And we will see you over there. And now, back to the script.
Here we go.
So, Samuel D. Hunter, new playwright to the podcast. Sam was raised in Idaho. That is going to be very relevant to this show. Yeah, and frankly, to a lot of his plays. In the same way that a lot of playwrights end up writing about the kind of region in which they were raised. This goes back. This is a long history of writers and artists of all kinds that write about where they were raised. Sam Hunter, who while he now lives in New York City with his wonderful family, he was raised in Idaho, and he often writes about Idaho, about religious communities in Idaho specifically, and that features in this play and in many of his other plays. He did study playwriting at NYU, at the Iowa Playwrights Workshop, and at Juilliard, which is like, if you were trying to come up with 3 really impressive places to study playwriting, and then you just did all 3, that would be NYU, the Iowa Playwrights Workshop, and Juilliard. Yep, that is a robust training in playwriting, and it comes out. I've read many Sam Hunter plays now, and I mentioned in the beginning, like his technical execution of the craft is so sharp, and then the ideas that he works with are so complex that what you get are these just plays that you engage with, and as you're in them, this is really good. And Sam Hunter is just really good. There's just no other way to say it. He won the 2011 Obie Award for playwriting for his play Bright New Boise. You might see again some of that Idaho background there. And he is a 2014 recipient of the MacArthur Fellowship, or what's sometimes called the Genius Grant. His other plays you may recognize: A Case for the Existence of God, which won the New York Drama Critics Circle Award for Best Play and was a Hull Warner Award winner. He's been a resident playwright at Signature Theater. And in fact, he has a play on the West End as of the recording of this podcast right now called Clarkston. He also has another play, his play Little Bear Ridge Road, premiered at Steppenwolf last year, starring Laurie Metcalf and Joe Mantello. And my understanding is that he wrote that play specifically for that pair of actors, was commissioned at their request, and that play is now transferring to Broadway. So, I mean, we're talking about a West End and a Broadway run at the same time. He is a 2012 Whitting Writers Award winner and has an honorary doctorate from the University of Idaho. His work has been produced off-Broadway, places like the Lincoln Theater Center, the Playwrights Horizons. I talked about Signature Theater, Club Thumb, Rattlestick Playwrights Theater, also Theater Royal Bath, Theater Rotterdam, Dallas Theater Center, Seattle Rep, Denver Center, Woolly Mammoth, South Coast Rep. Some of those are going to come up as we talk about this play. This is just one of the most relevant, integrated working American playwrights that we have. Just simply put, Sam Hunter is a playwright, and he is playwriting at the highest levels right now. And that's an impressive place to get for anybody. And I just can't rave about what I think of his skill enough. The Whale won the 2013 Drama Desk Award, a 2013 Lucille Lortel Award for Outstanding Play. It also won a GLAAD Media Award, a Drama League, and Outer Critics Circle nomination for Best Play. So the story of The Whale, as I understand it, and I'm never becoming an expert in these things, I'm just sort of pulling together various sources to give you a little sense. But my understanding of the story is that after he graduated from Juilliard, he was living in New York City. And this is a story he tells pretty regularly when he does interviews about The Whale. He was teaching a class at Rutgers in expository writing. Now, that is what the protagonist of this play is doing, although doing it online. So Sam Hunter is similarly teaching these writing classes. And he was teaching these writing classes to first-year students. And he sort of came to be aware through working with them that his students weren't really engaging with any ideas. They weren't taking the class seriously and what it was trying to do for their ability to think. And instead, were just trying to write something that would get a passing grade. So the story goes, one day he asks them to forget about the writing assignments they had planned and to just, and this is something close to a direct quote, write something honest. Write something honest. That plot point is going to come up in the play. And in fact, the responses that he got back from his students come up in the play as well. Okay, that's awesome. That's just awesome. This play was then gone on from that sort of experience. He talks about being on the subway and beginning to craft ideas for this kind of a play. The play goes on to be created through Playpen in Philadelphia. It was workshopped at Icicle Creek Theater Festival, which is in Washington, and received its world premiere at the Denver Center for the Performing Arts as part of the Colorado New Play Summit. And then went on to have what we often on this podcast call the regional theater professional theater circuit. So this is a series of kind of the topmost level of regional theaters that often will do a new play, especially a very good new play, within about a 5-year span. So it goes on, off-Broadway at Playwrights Horizon in 2012, 2013 South Coast Rep, Victory Gardens Theater in Chicago, 2014 Marin Theater Company in California, 2015 Rep Stage in D.C., 16 Unicorn Theater in Kansas City, 18 Actors Theater in Grand Rapids, in 22 at the Costa Mesa Playhouse, in 23 at the Sheepdog Theater in Tokyo? Cool. At 24 at the Alex Theater in Australia, earlier this year, May of 25 at the No Name Theater in Helsinki, and Coming up, if you're listening along with this podcast in chronological order, you can see this play at the Retford Little Theatre in Nottinghamshire in November of 2025, November of this year, and next year, just about a year from now, September 2026, by the Salterton Drama Club. Our opportunities you have to see it. But again, if you know this play, it is probably because of the 2022 film starring Brendan Fraser and Sadie Sink. It did win 2 Oscars, Brendan Fraser's award for acting and a hair and makeup award, which I'm sure you will understand why it won once, if you don't know the play at all, once Jackson describes the plot for you. The director, Aronofsky, he had already received a Academy Award nomination. He's the director behind Black Swan, for example. Apparently saw the Playwrights Horizons production and immediately contacted Sam Hunter about securing the rights, but it took a long time for the movie to manifest, about a decade before it premiered at the Venice International Film Festival. At that point, it starts to win awards. It receives standing ovations, different award nominations all over the place, and then the story of the movie kind of capstones in that emotional moment that culturally I think a lot of people were very invested in when Brendan Fraser won the award. Him as the actor for this specific character. I mean, it was a real cultural thing that, again, it's hard not to feel, maybe not quite read into the play, but feel into the play as you engage with it. So there's a little bit of the story of this play.
Yeah, for sure. There's lots of a storied history around it, and I'm excited for the conversation on it today. I'm going to give us my best swing at a summary of this play. I'll acknowledge at the start of it, though, this play is masterful in how it gives you information and gives you pathos, and to summarize it is sort of an affront. So we'll get into it here, but I'm just going to give us a brief summary to kind of get us on the same page. This play takes place in Idaho, as Jacob already referred to, and it sort of centers on the role of Charlie. Now, I'm just going to read Charlie's character description here real quick. He is male, weighing around 600 pounds, in his early to mid 40s. Kind of a defining feature of this play is Charlie, oftentimes played by an actor in some sort of a suit, and he is oftentimes sort of in his couch or on his couch in his living room doing something, and those things sort of range. He's a professor, as Jacob has already alluded to, some connection to Sam Hunter's story. He's a professor. He teaches English. He teaches especially writing, and is trying to teach students via online how to write better essays. So
notably with the camera off, he teaches just by voice.
Yep, only by voice. Again, written in sort of a pre-Zoom era, but like in the height of Skype. So that's kind of an interesting moment.
You know what? I didn't think about that at all.
Yeah.
That didn't even register to me, but you're obviously so right about this because it premiered in 2012, I think.
Yeah.
But nowadays it's like, a professor is teaching a class. I just assumed it was on Zoom. I didn't even think to question that. That's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And we kind of have this sort of cold open with Charlie. We're going to meet a bunch more characters who are all very connected with Charlie, but this cold open is sort of like out of the blue, we meet someone who is not connected to Charlie at all. We have this kind of first scene where he is teaching folks on the screen and talking about revision and how revision is a strength. And then the next scene, he's kind of fortunately broken in on as he has a heart event. Someone comes to his door, knocks on his door, and he calls them in because he's on the ground, assumedly close to dying. And he calls the person in, and it's Elder Thomas. Elder Thomas is a Mormon missionary, and he kind of comes in and saves him, and sort of saves him as a result, or by reading this essay that Charlie offers him to read to him. It's kind of a high stakes scene. It happens alongside of him kind of watching porn on his computer, and so there's lots going on that Elder Thomas steps into. But this is a character that we don't know anything about, isn't connected to Charlie at all. And then later on in the day, we meet Liz. Now, Liz is connected to Charlie. Liz comes over. She's a nurse, and she's sort of is regularly helping Charlie out. We learn a lot of stuff in a short amount of time. This play takes place over the course of a week, and in the first half of the week, we meet a lot of different people. So Liz comes in. We know that Liz is connected to Charlie somehow. It's a little unclear eventually how they're connected, but eventually they have this knowledge of their relationship build out that Charlie was in a relationship with Alan, who is Liz's brother. And so Liz has continued to be a part of Charlie's life after Alan has passed away. We'll get to more about that in a little while. We also learned, though, that before Charlie was in a relationship with Alan, he was married to Mary and had a daughter named Ellie. And so we kind of learn about a lot of these relationships in the second person, or the second hand, kind of off in the distance as he's talking to Liz. But what Liz is there to tell him about is the fact that he's likely dying. He's got very low amount of time to live as a result of a congestive heart failure, and she's telling him over and over that he needs to get to the hospital, and he's refusing to go to the hospital. He doesn't want to go in, doesn't want to for a variety of reasons, doesn't want to receive that help. Now, Liz continues to advocate for that, but he continues to refuse it. She says, you're not doing well, and if you don't take this seriously in a little while, you're going to die. And he says, well, I would love to get the chance to talk with my daughter, Ellie, who he's been estranged from for quite a while. Ellie is 17 years old, and she eventually comes over the next day on Tuesday and agrees. He calls her and lets her know that he'd like to see her again. She hasn't seen him in a very long time. She comes over and is sort of like abrasive to Charlie. Is
sort of abrasive.
Is like, yep.
She's very mean. She says things that are provocative, that are other people, this is not my reading into it, other people describe as cruel. At one point, very late in the play, just to reveal a surprise, her own mother calls her evil. I mean, she's very mean. Very mean.
Occasionally also manipulative, but also beloved. Charlie clearly loves her a lot, and has invited her over and basically offers a deal for her to hang out with him. He tries to figure out what she needs. She says that she's struggling in all of her subjects in school, and he says that he will write her essays for her if she stays. He also says that he has quite a bit of money saved up, and that he'll pay her essentially to be there and be around him for a time. And so she eventually agrees to that. Now, in amongst this agreement that is struck, he's sort of working on the essay. He also asks her to write in this notebook, just kind of write whatever thoughts she might have. In amidst this, Elder Thomas returns and kind of continues this sort of, he saved Charlie's life. He tries to continue to talk about Mormonism with him, and so he comes over and tries to continue to engage with him.
Charlie says in that first scene that he wants to hear about the church, and that's kind of the way the exchange goes. In fact, Elder Thomas asks, "Can I tell you about the church?" And Charlie agrees. Now that phrasing is a little bit at issue because Elder Thomas takes that to mean, let me tell you the story of the Mormon faith. Let me talk to you about believing in God. And as we'll learn later, Charlie very deliberately meant, tell me about the church that you go to here in town. I have questions about that. Not necessarily the building, but the congregation, the story of that particular group of people, and particularly one day from that very particular group of people.
Right. Yep. Yeah. The specifics of this particular community. So eventually Elder Thomas is over. He meets Ellie, which will come up in a moment as well. So they kind of meet each other. They're roughly the same age. Ellie is 17. Elder Thomas is 19. Pretty young folks. And so they kind of meet and cross paths as Ellie is leaving. But notably in kind of a scene, I believe it's on Wednesday, so the third day of the play, Elder Thomas is over and he's talking with Charlie about Mormonism and the church, and Charlie reveals that the man he was in love with, Alan, was a Mormon, a pretty strong believer in Mormonism. And estranged from his father as a result of their relationship. He was invited to church one day by Alan was invited to church one day by his father. Heard something at church that basically Charlie says that essentially killed him. As a result of this sermon, he kind of wastes away over the course of a couple diseases and doesn't survive.
Yeah, I think we sort of read in that he spirals into just like really severe depression as a result of whatever happened at church that day, and it becomes kind of a long suicide.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, this is Liz's brother, Liz, who is also in the play, and Liz and Charlie have then kind of continued this friendship partially out of this person they both knew, I guess, since then.
Yeah, it's in another great scene, right? We have this scene with Charlie and Elder Thomas, where we reveal more about Charlie and Alan's relationship and the connection to the Mormon Church, and he asks Elder Thomas to find out what he can about that service and what happened that day, because he's never been able to know what it is. Later on that scene, not even in another day, Liz is over, and she reveals that she is Alan's sister, and she reveals another facet of the story of Alan being this missionary who went off to Switzerland and fell in love with Charlie, and just all the connection points emerge both for us and for Elder Thomas. So Elder Thomas is kind of tasked or asked to go out and find more information about this service. Ellie and Charlie continue to meet. On Thursday, she comes over. He has the essay sort of finished for her. And she, like, in conversation, again, she's often very cruel, but continues to engage with Charlie, and Charlie keeps trying to, like, draw stuff out of her and learn stuff about her life. At the end of one of the scenes, she says she's hungry. She goes off and makes some sandwiches and, like, puts Ambien in his sandwich so that he falls asleep, kind of passes out completely. So it's just her there kind of hanging out in the apartment. And then Elder Thomas shows up with presumably some information and sees Charlie asleep on the couch, and Ellie kind of draws him in. They get into a conversation. She eventually wears him down and gets him to confess that, as she has discovered, he's not on the missionary roster for the Mormon Church in this area. Who are you, she asks, and he says, well, actually, you're right. I'm from somewhere else. My mission was elsewhere, and I got so mad at my partner. Notably, Mormon missionaries often go 2 by 2, door to door for their mission, and he's been coming alone so far, and so he admits to her over some weed that he was off in Oregon, sort of beat up his partner because he wasn't taking it seriously, and sort of ran away to Idaho to try to find a new field of mission in order to try to help people. And so this kind of becomes, especially this spark or connection with Charlie, he's been fixated on as the thing that maybe he can help with. In amidst all of that, Charlie is still passed out on the couch, and in walks Mary. Again, Mary is married to Charlie, or was married to Charlie. She is Ellie's mother, who Ellie now lives with, and Ellie hasn't been telling her that she's been going over to Charlie's house as per their agreement. And so she comes in, finds Charlie passed out, calls Liz. Liz comes over, helps kind of restore Charlie to consciousness. But now he's on oxygen. It's clear that he's having a rougher and rougher time as the week goes on, still refusing to go into the hospital. As it becomes clearer and clearer now in the scene with Mary that he's been putting aside money this whole time for Ellie, that this money that he's offering her is in fact a savings account that he's been putting money into, hasn't told Liz about, has kind of spoken to Mary about. Mary knows about it. And so more secrets are revealed. Ellie and Elder Thomas end up leaving, Elder Thomas having not described what he has discovered so far. Ellie leaves. Liz
very
leaves.
High, because
very high.
Ellie shared her marijuana with him.
Yep. And then we have this scene between Mary and Charlie where they kind of commiserate over especially Mary commiserates over the difficulty of raising Ellie. Charlie kind of talks about how he wishes he was more connected, and also just there's a lot of water under the bridge for these two characters, so they kind of reflect on their time married and also the time of separation. Mary has this conversation about how she met Alan when Alan was really sick and helped him and thought that she was going to give him the piece of her mind, but really just ended up helping him as a result of kind of meeting him in this moment of weakness at a supermarket. To very briefly sum up what is like a very tragic end of the play, eventually Elder Thomas returns and tells a bit of the story that he has, but he also has been outed by Ellie to his parents. She like has called his, I'm not going to get the right word right, but
Yeah,
his,
and maybe we want to be careful about the word outed just in context of this play. He's been Ellie has called his parents and told them that he's where he is. He was supposed to be on Michigan, Oregon, and again attacked his mission partner and disappeared. And Ellie has taken these pictures of him smoking marijuana too
Yeah.
and sent those on to his parents, and they've reached out to him and rather than being furious, have like expressed their deep love and worry and want him back, which he, at least in the scene that we see, is not responding very well to. But also has found out what happened.
Yeah. He's discovered what happened the day that Alan went to church and heard his dad give a sermon, and that sermon was on Jonah and the whale. And the whatever the effect of that sermon was, sort of brought him into that moment, which is sort of a surprise to Charlie. Charlie sort of assumed that maybe something happened, or there was some confrontation, or some sort of a horrible thing maybe occurred at church. And what it was this sermon, and that had the effect that it did on Alan. The kind of focus on Jonah and turning around and wondering what he was doing in that sort of a situation.
Feels like there's another play there.
Yeah,
know?
for sure.
Like, I don't know how much what else happened. I don't know that we know, or if that really is the whole story. There is another story there.
Yeah, for sure. Eventually it ends in a real, like, both of these characters are in really raw moments, and they end up sort of yelling at each other by the end of it, as Charlie is basically telling Elder Thomas, you gotta go home. you gotta go and reset this. And Elder Thomas is like, I'm here to like try to fix something about you. I'm trying to figure this out. They end up yelling at each other, and Elder Thomas leaves, assumedly. He doesn't come back. This is the last we see of Elder Thomas. So then it's the next day, and Charlie is in really rough shape. He's really struggling. Liz comes over, and essentially he's dying. Earlier that morning, he kind of signs off from his online students. He lets them know that, kind of as a result of some unorthodox prompting that he's been doing in a couple of the scenes, of like, just write something that you care about. As a result of this unorthodox prompting, he's been removed from his post. And notably, he comes on camera for the first time in the play and kind of lets them know who he is and what he hopes that they can do going forward if they are honest with their writing. But when Liz finds him, he's in really rough shape, and she essentially tells him, you need to go into the hospital. And again, he asserts, I don't want to go into the hospital, because again, he's worried about the amount of money that he has and wanting to like pass as much money on to Ellie as he can. Into this steps Ellie, who returns and basically is also quite surprised at how bad he is doing this particular day, which forces, kind of prompts Liz to go ahead and call the ambulance. And she sort of ends up stepping out, is asked to step out by Charlie so that he and Ellie can have one more moment. And Ellie comes back with the essay that he gave her to turn in. And it turns out he turned in an essay that he had gotten from Mary, that Ellie wrote like 4 years ago or something about Moby Dick, which has been an essay that has been often repeated throughout this play, little lines and snippets of it.
And by this point, I think we know that Ellie wrote it probably at one time. It's one of the mysteries of the play, what this essay about Moby Dick that he keeps quoting is. But there comes a point kind of in the middle, late half of the play where I think we know it was written by Ellie, although that's not been explicitly revealed. And it's in this final scene that Ellie explicitly says, I remember writing this in 8th grade or whatever.
Yep. And so she's kind of shocked that he submitted that particular essay, and not something that, as she said, was going to be an easy A or an easy passing grade for this class that she needs to pass. But in the last scene of the play, as he's kind of in this really rough shape, he asks her to read this essay to him one more time. And as she reads the essay to him, he slowly unhooks himself from the oxygen that he is on. And the play ends with this sort of a very theatrical but likely scene of him passing on as this essay is read to him and the lights go out.
Yes, I mean, this is like character-based work in the highest sense. So there's a lot that happens, which makes it hard to summarize, but not so much like a clear linear action leads to action kind of storytelling plot. It's really rooted in who these people are and in this exact moment in their lives. Essentially, this is the last week in the life of Charlie, who's dying due to congestive heart failure as a result of his obesity, his health, his long-term health prospects. And so in that last week, he reaches out to his estranged daughter to try to rebuild a connection. And that's like the poster version, sort of summary of the plot. What in an article that Sam wrote for the Playwrights Horizons when they did the production there, he says, and this I think adequately summarizes your experience trying to summarize the play. He says there are many elements that circle around in the story in The Whale: morbid obesity, Mormonism, small town America, etc. But ultimately, the play grew out of this struggle to teach independent thought and empathy. So Charlie is this teacher, and he has at various times throughout the week these classes that he's teaching, like we've said, on Skype probably in 2012, but nowadays we'd say Zoom. And what happens is that he does exactly what Sam Hunter did in the story that I told you all from the writing of the play. He tells them to stop doing their writing assignments. He wants them to write something honest. And that's what causes him to be fired then on that last day. And it is an interesting, it's one of those things that almost feels like a subplot to the play. This like teaching class that he's doing. But because of how much emphasis emotionally the play puts on the essay that Ellie wrote, there's just no way around the idea that like writing, expressing your thoughts, communicating what you really feel, and having a perspective on the world is an essential, an area of investigation that is being done in this play.
Yeah, absolutely. I think by virtue of every character in this having like such a compelling story to them, it is oftentimes sort of like as I think of this play, the scenes that don't like pop into my head are the ones of him talking about essay writing. But because the play is about Charlie reaching out to his daughter to try to get a moment of connection, that he decides to structure around essay writing and talking about essay writing with her, I think that adds a lot of weight to those scenes when we're looking at it from an analysis perspective, because that is the sort of tool that is being used by Charlie to connect with Ellie, is essay writing. And so all of his reflection on essay writing is actually about the relationship that he has with his daughter.
Yeah, well, and the play is structured essentially around this series of mysteries. In a literal sense, it's structured around the days of the week. But the way the story works is that we are trying to figure out. We don't get all the information up front. There's exposition being done in the sense that there's information being revealed, really through nearly the last page of the play.
Yeah,
it's a series of things that we don't know. Right? There's the Moby Dick essay. Who is it? Why is that important? There's what the heck is going on with Charlie's class? There's who is Liz to Charlie? Why are they so fond for each other? What the heck is going on with Elder Thomas? What has Ellie told or not told her mother? There's a whole series of them, and there's several important ones that I'm sure I'm forgetting even in that. But to me, the essential mystery, and maybe this is just by virtue of the fact that it's the first one, is this essay. The first scene is that Charlie gets on and is teaching a class. It's a monologue scene. This is a very common playwriting technique where you have these dialogic scenes interspersed with monologue scenes. So the monologue scenes in this case are Charlie teaching. But then you have these character-based dialogic scenes. And the second scene, so the first scene's a teaching scene, and then you get the scene where Charlie is watching porn and starts to have the heart attack or the heart palpitations or whatever's going on physically with him that Elder Thomas busts into. And as you described, Charlie gets Elder Thomas to read this essay out loud to him about Moby Dick, and it like calms him down and sort of saves his life. And that is right up front, starts right away, and it I think essentially sets up what kind of ends up being the core mystery of the play. What is going on here? What's up with this essay? And it's really not, I don't even know if it necessarily concludes, but that part of the story is, goes into literally the last line of the play is Ellie reading her own essay out loud to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As you slowly get more and more paragraphs from it, you keep wondering about it. Because also, in addition to him handing Elder Thomas this to read, he will often recite it. Like he'll be in a scene.
He has
sort
it
of
memorized. Yes.
Yeah. He has it like by himself in a room, or like when another character is there, he will like say a line of it from memory. And so it's clear that like whatever he's quoting matters a lot to him. And I think I agree that slowly before the end of the play, you would likely have a guess that it's Ellie's essay.
There's a moment where he finds that he's been asking Ellie to write her thoughts in sort of a journal when she's over with him, and he finds her thoughts written down at one point and reads them out loud, and then quotes the essay, and then reads them out loud again and quotes the essay. And that's to me, I think, very much an indication that at that moment we're supposed to go, oh, she wrote that Moby Dick essay.
Mm-hmm.
But then what comes of that information is still to come.
Yeah.
And it's a little writerly, I would say, to make an essay about Moby Dick, the kind of core of this play, and to have the story of Jonah be so wrapped up in what happened, in the traumatic past that caused this thing to happen in Charlie's, inner life that has expressed itself through the physical symptoms that he is experiencing. It's a little image metaphor writerly that it's Moby Dick and Jonah that are the kind of mythic stories that revolve around this play.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a little bit of that sort of, and there's this kind of often used motif of waves as a sound effect that emerges in multiple scenes that you kind of are wondering about. Certainly ties into the whale imagery, ties into the Moby Dick imagery. It also ties into sort of a touching story of their time traveling out west. The last time that Mary and Charlie and Ellie all traveled as a family together, they went out to the sea. So like there's lots of that woven all together with all of these motifs and echoes of other parts of the script.
Yeah, in a very masterful way, this play is as much about, maybe this is not true in the way that I'm saying it, but this play is as much about what happened in the past as it is about what's happening now. And that's not quite true, because what's happening now is an attempt to deal with the things that happened in the past. And it is very important how they're dealing with it. But a lot of the play is in each scene sort of unspools the whatever a little more. And we, the audience, see a little more of what caused the events that we're seeing now. And we see a little more of what caused the events we're seeing now. And a little more, and a little more, and a little more.
With like the immediacy of Charlie's dying.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Well, it's like the inciting incident in some ways. Is
Yeah.
his heart thing that the essay sort of saves him from. Is like, okay. And Liz essentially says a number of times in the first couple of scenes, Sam does a really good job of having somebody say, like, he's going to be dead by this weekend.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now there's like, it's a compelling script from like a family play standpoint, right? Like this would be a really interesting family play because we have tangentially related people. We've got, Charlie and Mary and Ellie as a former family. And then we have Alan, who has died, and his sister Liz. And Liz is still connected. Like, all of that is really interesting and complex. And it would be its own story. Likely maybe a little bit shorter, but not by much. Like, that's a compelling play. Into that, we have Elder Thomas, who's this 19-year-old Mormon missionary who like stumbles in basically to the unlocked door and saves Charlie's life. And what a cool, chaotic, but then also like really integrated random person to emerge into the script.
No, that's absolutely true. And again, I haven't seen the movie, but my understanding from reading reviews is that one of the changes in the movie that many people don't like as much is that the Elder Thomas character is, let's say, distinctly less Mormon than the Mormon Elder Thomas in this script. He's kind of a generic Christian sect in the movie. And again, I haven't seen it, but I'm just quoting from the reviews. In fact, one reviewer said something to the effect of like, this was probably a business decision because Mormons buy movie tickets too, implying that Elder Thomas's presentation in The Whale is negative or critical of the Mormon faith, and that, you know, Mormons may be offended by his presentation, or he's designed to criticize the Mormon church. And certainly Sam Hunter is making an effort to point out the way that the Mormon church has historically treated LGBTQ people, and in a very in a very tangible way, the violence that has done, both in the case that Alan, you know, died essentially by suicide as a result of what happened there, and Charlie's much longer disintegration as a result of that violence. And so there's no way around in this play that very particular criticism. And that ultimately, that's what Elder Thomas is sort of sent away, because when he has this revelation about the Jonah story, he comes in and he essentially turns it into like, and so God put me in your life to tell you that you shouldn't be gay,
that you should repent.
That's what I'm here for. And Charlie sends him on his way, very much so in that moment. All that said, he's his own kind of interesting character. He has his own mystery and his own issues that he's struggling with. And I think that Charlie, the play rather, Sam Hunter, is critical of the Mormon church and that particular violence being done by the Mormon church and by many other churches besides. But I don't hate Elder Thomas. Like, he doesn't, you know, like, he's not like a villain of the play.
No, I think some of that has to do with his youngness, right? Like, he's 19 years old, and sort of in that like fervor moment. And I think in addition to that, the other characters do treat him with, you know, Liz is pretty abrasive to him, and says like, this is why I it starts with, this is why I hate Mormons, and then it moves to her saying, this is why I hate Mormonism, and she sort of explains her posture on that, much, and she and Elder Thomas have a back and forth about that for sure. But it is Charlie especially is like open to him. Now, he's open to him in the form of like, he wants to know what happened out there, but he's kind to him. He continues to interact with him. Ellie has this sort of like gravitation towards him, even though it's a confrontational and sometimes manipulative gravitation towards him. And so like, there is this sort of like compassionate posture, even amidst his sort of ulterior motive of there to talk about his faith with them, at least.
Yeah, I mean, he's a character who's very much going through something himself, right? And that is, it is kind of tangential to the plot and that's why this play is not so like tightly plot constructed. The Elder Thomas part is woven in and integrated, but is also its own part of it in a straight, like, you know, Charlie is going to go through the things he's going through with his family and die at the end of the week, probably with or without the Elder Thomas part of the story necessarily. It's a little bit of a coincidence that Elder Thomas happens to stumble in his door that day. Now, maybe Charlie would have died in that scene at that moment if Elder Thomas hadn't stumbled in. And so there's some, you know, Elder Thomas's presence is the only thing that allows the play to happen. That, you know, that very much could be the case. But I do find myself like wondering how to make sense of the various parts of this play as a unit. I mean, it's so powerful and so affecting. But it, as I quoted from earlier, and as you noted in the summary, like, it just deals with so many things. And so then I come back to this first scene where Charlie is teaching the class. And what he's having them do is he reads them a bad essay from a student that he's had in the past. And he asks them to post their revisions. He's essentially making them revise this bad essay as a way to teach them about good essays. And at the end of that short monologue on the class, on the online class, he says, and remember, the more revision you guys do on these papers, the better. The more you can change, chances are the stronger these papers will be, all right? And that idea of revision is one of the things that he ends up talking with his students online about several times. In fact, the conclusion he comes to is, I've been teaching you to revise and revise your own ideas to make them clearer more and more, that I'm actually preventing you from having those unique, independent ideas, those real thoughts in and of themselves. And that makes me wonder, because it's the first scene of the play, and because Sam Hunter has been so insistent that this idea about writing and about expressing your real thoughts and having real empathy is core to the play, about like revision as a theme or motif, and like the sort of the do-over, the correcting yourself as you live your life. And about like editing your thoughts as you say them. I mean, one of the things that Charlie loves so much about Ellie, even though the things that she says are offensive and cruel and manipulative, they are unfiltered. And he deals with these like very filtered students who are only trying to say the exact right thing to get a grade all the time. And he loves that Ellie speaks in an unfiltered way. And I don't know. There's something there to me that starts to wrap it together in a way that I haven't quite yet like pulled exactly in. But that also, relates to the fact that so much of this play is about the past too, right? Like doing things over, changing them, wanting to correct these things that happened. There's something about revision, both as a positive and negative idea, that is going on that I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. It's there, and it's ephemeral, and it certainly weaves its way through all the scenes, right?
Because isn't that what to go back to Elder Thomas, isn't that what Elder Thomas is doing?
Yes.
He's doing his mission over.
Yep.
He went to Oregon, and his mission did not go the way he wanted. They didn't save anybody, so he punched his friend. That's his words. They didn't save anybody. So he punched his partner, and he came to Idaho, the next state over, and he's just trying to do it again.
Yep.
Only this time he wants to actually save somebody, and that somebody happens to be Charlie. And so that feels like the place to me where it's like, okay, that now I'm starting to see the integration of what's going on here. This is a do-over for Elder Thomas.
Mm-hmm. Yep. If you kind of use that as a lens, right, it starts to echo with a lot of characters, right? Like you have Liz as well, wanting sort of a do-over of caretaking. Or
not even wanting it, but almost being forced to do the same thing she had to do for her brother when he was wasting away and dying for Charlie. He's not wasting away, literally it's the opposite, but he is dying a slow death that she feels he could prevent. Exactly again. I mean, again, we have somebody who's forced to do the same thing over again.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Charlie as well is sort of like trying to get another run at a relationship with Ellie and trying to figure out a way to negotiate that. And so the slow evolution of the prompt scenes that Charlie has online, of like the first one being about revision is a strength. Continue to revise if you find something to revise, and it'll continue to get better, until slowly he continues to say like, I believe I have sort of beaten out the ability to have a true thought from you. Just give me any thought that you think is true and see how that takes you. And that's the some of what you see him trying to do with Ellie as well.
No, absolutely. And it then, the Moby Dick essay, and again, this is another thing, and I haven't seen the movie, but so the reviewers of the movie say that the movie makes much less of the essay and much less of the Jonah story. And that does seem like a problem in the movie, because it in the play is so crucial to, frankly, why the play is called The Whale. And it is a metaphor of Charlie's size, of course, but also with the ideas that the play is working with. And so if you take away the ideas, you're left with a title that's just a reference to Charlie's size. That feels a little one note to me, but it's probably not fair of me to criticize the movie without having seen it. But all that to say, the Moby Dick essay is so important, and Charlie never quite explains why he thinks it's so good. What he does say about it over and over is that it's a great essay. He says it all the time. It's such a great essay. It's so awesome. It failed. He says, got a bad grade, but it really is a good essay. And then when he submits it on Ellie's behalf to her teacher, and Ellie's like, I failed the assignment. And Charlie's still like, but it's a great essay. But he never really says why. And we don't really hear that much of the essay. And again, it's one of those sort of slow reveal. We get more and more information as it goes. But towards the end, of her essay, the one that he repeats, she's now so this is what she wrote as an 8th grader. I felt saddest of all when I read the boring chapters that were only descriptions of whales, because I knew that the author was just trying to save us from his own sad story just for a little while. This book made me think about my own life. Now up until the very end, that's as much as we've heard of the essay. Just up to this book made me think about my own life. So, and I think I'm right about this without going back to check 100%, but I'm pretty sure the end of the play, the last line of the play, is we get just a little snippet of the next part of the essay. And that little snippet is, and then it made me feel glad for my blank. So there's something happening here that's a little hard to describe, but I feel pretty sure is there. And that is that the essay about the whale Moby Dick and about feeling sad for her own life that concludes with, or that as much of we've heard in the play is, this book made me think about my own life. Well, what's going on in Ellie's own life is that she has a dad who's morbidly obese. Now, she doesn't know that when she's an 8th grader. In fact, she hasn't seen him. The very first moment she sees him in the play is, I think, the first time she's seen him since she was 2. But it's hard to escape that that's what feels like is being said in the essay. So when in the end, we just get the next snippet and it's not about that at all, because she says, and then it made me feel glad for my whatever. I don't quite know exactly what's happening, but what's happening there feels central to this idea of revision, the reason why he thinks it's such a good essay, the reason why it's so important, the reason why he's felt the need to connect with her again. There is something happening in that final reveal, in a play that is structured based on the revealing of information. That next 5 words or whatever of the essay
Right.
are the end of the play for a reason. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I know why yet.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I agree that it's sort of like hard to know what exactly the reason is, but whatever the reason is, something like the level that Charlie loves this essay is sort of the important part of the essay, or like from an analysis perspective of like whatever this essay is in its entirety. Certainly the parts that we read, very powerful, like the paragraph you read around feeling sadness in the boring chapters, very powerful and just a good insight to the book Moby Dick. But yeah, so I think what it does to Charlie, regardless of whether or not we know, we get to have this sort of like imaginative conversation around like why it matters so much to him that Ellie wrote this and he memorized it and he continues to dwell in it so much.
Yeah, and I because he doesn't ever explain it, we assume maybe it has something to do with his ideas about having a free and original thought. We wonder if it has to do with the fact that she points out that the protagonist of Moby Dick starts the play in a bed with another man, or starts the book, the novel rather, in a bed with another man. Does it have something to do with that? Does it have something to do with the idea that she proposes that the whale doesn't have any emotions, but the protagonists do? All in all, though, I mean, it is worth saying every other person in the play, maybe save for Ellie, like clearly expresses that they think it's a bad essay. Like it's not like it is not, I don't think, intended for us to hear it and be like, she's brilliant.
Right.
She's a writer in disguise. She's the best student he's ever had. And that's what this is about. He has this unique idea about it.
Yeah.
And it has to do with what Hunter says about empathy, about independent thought, about the way that we speak our own lives against each other, or with not against, like in opposition, but like in contact with each other. This is from he does an interview with University of Iowa with Sarah Moninger about the whale, and this is what he says audiences should take away from it. This is, I think, just a heart of it. And he's talking about the film, but again, the film is very, very much based on it's a pretty faithful adaptation, except for some changes to the play. He says, early in my career, I made the decision I wasn't going to be a cynical writer. To me, cynicism is easy and intellectually bankrupt. The harder thing is to have faith in someone and to have hope, especially right now. My hope is that people get the sense that this is a story about hard-won hope and dignity, and about the importance of having faith in other people, which is something Charlie has in spades. The world has given him every reason to be cynical, every reason not to have faith in other people, but he refuses to lose that faith. That's the heart of, and he says the film, but I think we could say the play.
Mm-hmm. Which is sort of evoked / maybe echoed in Charlie's line towards the late part of the play, where he says, do you ever get the feeling that people are incapable of not caring? People are amazing.
And just to say that line comes in, what he's describing is the fact that Ellie, essentially told Elder Thomas's parents where he was, got him in trouble, and he's presenting that as if Ellie did Elder Thomas a great favor, that she was trying to save him from this thing. And that may or may not be true. I think we haven't talked a lot about Ellie in this conversation. Our focus has been mostly on Charlie, but how exactly we're supposed to read and interpret Ellie as a person is complex. And maybe he's right that she was trying to save him, or maybe she was just trying to do something interesting and hurtful to him. In either case, Charlie interprets it as something she's doing to help him. And out of that, at the very least, controversial interpretation of her actions comes that line, which is a beautiful line, a beautiful expression of faith in the world.
Yeah. The way that this play invites you to empathetic interpretations for actions of people is really interesting, especially in relationship to Ellie's character, because Charlie refuses. Rather than refuses, asserts that Ellie has more going on than this sort of abrasive exterior. And I do think that some of the journey of the play is learning the empathy for Ellie, certainly from the first scene, which like she comes in and is, as we mentioned, abrasive. But there is more going on that Charlie welcomes us as the audience into seeing, even if it is an overly optimistic, sometimes perhaps, interpretation of the events.
Well, certainly, yeah, that's that hard-won hope that Sam Hunter's talking about. And Charlie being a person who maybe has every reason not to have that hard-won hope in people. I mean, given the real trauma that he's experienced in his life and the harm that he's done to other people. He is not like a begging father that's like, please forgive me, I didn't mean it. He's upfront with Ellie about the fact that he, has hurt her in his life and hurt her mother, and has done things that he's not happy or proud about with her either. So he's the kind of person that has every reason not to have the hope that he does have. And that is, that's the part that is connective in a hopeful way, I think.
Mm-hmm. For sure. This play is so robust, and holds so many, lenses and identities through which people can see their own lives with. And thus it's such an interesting play to talk about, and we could continue to talk about it, but would like the chance to extend the conversation out to you, as well as it being the end of our time for this particular episode. Would love to welcome other conversation into it as well, because as I've already said, there's so many different really compelling backstories and intentions for each of these characters, and I wonder what has resonated with you. So if you'd like to chat about The Whale with folks who have read The Whale, you can find us on the socials at the username at NoScriptPodcast. We also have a Gmail, noscriptpodcast@gmail.com. Find us on any of those sites. We'd love to keep chatting about this play with you.
If you enjoyed this conversation, if you've enjoyed any of the other conversations in this season, if you're looking forward to our themed month, which begins next week, please recommend us to your family, your friends, anybody you know that likes conversations about theater, about writing. We do themes, characters, structure, technique, that kind of stuff is our jam. We love to talk about it. Send them our way. They can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on YouTube, all the places you get your podcasts. You can like our Facebook page, and a link to the new episode appears every Monday when we publish. Until then, I'm Jacob, here with Jackson, discussing The Whale by Sam Hunter. Thanks for joining us for No Script, the podcast.